Hello everyone. Today I would like to tell you a story. Valor, a great kingdom in the middle of the Elshire Ocean, named for the bravery of the first king. Below the quiet streets and tall towers there lies a secret, one that has been kept out of respect for the queen for many generations. The King of Valor vowed to the queen to keep this place sacred, and every generation that followed has done the same. Until now. One evening, King Elmon fell mysteriously ill. The loss was a tragedy for the kingdom, for King Elmon was a kind and generous king to all. Prince Theon was now to take the throne. Unlike his father, Theon was greedy. Instead of vowing to protect Valor's secret, he sought to take it for himself. King Elmon's friends were loyal, and they knew of the queen's fury. Fearing the worst, they conspired against their new king. They sent a message to Queen Isla of the Dragon Isles. Within a fortnight, she knew of Theon's greed, and sent her beast to send a clear reminder to the people of Valor. Her dragons made quick work of the new king, but she spared the villagers, allowing them to survive under her ruling. Now that we know the story of Valor, I would like to show you guys my process of building it. So we're starting off here with some very simple go brush terrain. I build this up, smooth it down a little bit, get the shapes that I want of the island. It's honestly kind of random. And then I replace out the grass in the bottom half so that we have some nice grassy fields, and then I'm going to be creating this flat painting over here. Once I've got a painting that I'm happy with, I'm going to replace that into the terrain as well. If you guys aren't familiar with the painting techniques I'm using right now, I have a tutorial on that. I will link it in the description. After this, we mark in some beaches, and then we start carving out a few rivers just to add some more interest to these mountains and the terrain. I really like the way this turned out, and I even went with some prismarine details and swirls to give this that extra fantasy look. I used sponge to mark in some water using glass, and then we can move on to the wireframing. The wireframing is going to be really important because this build was built from July up until now, so I've been working on it for a long time because I didn't have time to fully commit to it. So marking in a wireframing allows me to always know exactly what my plan is and where I'm at in the build. It also is just helpful in general, even if you're not taking that amount of time. Once that's done, I basically mark in a simple roof shape, some pillars for the main castle, and then a basic tower. Then we can start on a little bit more of the detailing because I am so excited to get into this. So we're going to be starting on this tower here. I absolutely love doing medieval tower detailing. It's just so much fun and so relaxing. I'm incorporating a lot of spruce wood and oak wood logs in there, as well as some sea lanterns for lighting. And I'm going to be giving this one a more detailed bottom and then a simpler roof. I'm pasting it once in the back and then working on another tower, which is quite a lot thicker and has a flatter roof. This one, however, is very detailed and is sort of that little gateway to the river. Once the larger tower is complete, we work on that wall, and then we work on filling in our main castle walls. The keep of the castle is going to be very, very important, and it's where a lot of the scenes in Valor end up taking place. So it's very important to get the outside of this detailed correctly. I take this slowly and do some really what I would call blocky details, where I kind of block in the walls and where I kind of think I might want some details, but I don't go in and detail it quite yet until I know exactly what I want. Then I do the same thing for the walls, marking in where they're going to be, some general details that I want, but not getting the full effect in until much later. I mark out an entranceway and where the basic village block is going to be, and then where I want a few more of the tall towers. Then we can continue along with the walls, filling them in and then adding some stone brick for a little bit of depth. Now we're moving back onto a tower. The towers are going to be very similarly detailed, but they are all different besides those two that we copied. So they all have very similar blocks, very similar window shapes, but they are slightly different in each one. I like adding those little variations, and I feel like it really helps to bring the castle to life. This one's even got a slightly different roof color. Then we go for this more simple tower in the back that has much less detailing on its side, but it is connected with a bridge, which I think adds quite a lot to this backside here because this is going to be so important for defense of that cave that is under the castle. So we want to make sure these back towers are super tall so that that cave can always be defended. Now that the castle is looking nice and blocked in, it's time to think about our village. So we're going to begin on the wireframing. First, we set up a couple of platforms where the village can sit and be close to the castle so that these upper levels can be defended. Then I roughly mark in some village houses' shapes. I'm doing wireframing at the start because this helps me to plan out my entire village, getting the houses closely knit together in the different shapes that I want, and planning out what they're going to be, like the barn, the blacksmith, an inn, a bakery, etc. And I also end up wireframing in some paths so that I can see where I want to place all the houses in the lower village. All of the wireframing in place really makes this come together, and it genuinely makes the building process so much easier when you've got this all marked out exactly where you want it. Now we're going to take a little break from our wireframing and work on just blocking in some more of our walls in the back here. The great part about a project of this size is I can always switch the part that I'm working on if I get bored of one part. Now it's time to do the blocking in of our village. This takes the absolute most time out of everything. It is so time consuming to get all of these roofs and walls all in place. I'm not doing any of the detailing here, and that is super important. I want to get all of this completely blocked in before I do any detailing. That gets all of the boring part out of the way, and then I can sit back, relax, and do all of the super fun detailing that comes afterwards. It's a really, really rewarding experience to do it this way. Once we've got the inn, the bakery, and the tower all blocked in, we can move on to our trees. I do build a couple of original trees for this terrain, but I also end up taking some trees from other projects that I have just lying around and pasting them into the terrain as well. As we know, this world is connected to our Dragon Isles world, so that is actually where I took a few of the trees from. We also mark out some paths and finish our detailing. Then we turn our attention back to the keep, which I think needs something. This large, super detailed tower here is the bedroom of our king, so this is a super important room, and it definitely ends up looking very royal. Now that all the details are in on our castle and village, it's time to work on the beasts that the queen sends. First up, we have a wyvern here. I'm going to be wireframing this onto the actual castle so that I can get the exact scale and position that I want with it interacting with the build. Then I'm going to copy this and move it over to the side where I can finish actually building it. I actually end up doing most of the building process completely by hand, which is different for me, but I wanted to do that to show that you guys on Bedrock who maybe don't have access to World Edit can still pull off a dragon like this in your builds. I start by wireframing out a rib cage, then mark in some basic shapes, the tail, the wings, and then I just start blocking out my legs, filling in the blocks as I go, kind of wireframing it out at first, and then just filling it in, working the blocks around to get the exact shape that I want. Because this dragon is so much smaller than my usual dragons, it's very easy to pull off something like this, and brushes would actually hurt it more than helping it. Once I've got the main body and tail all worked out, we can start working up towards the neck and head. For the head, I'm going to be going with the same shape that I usually do. I start with a sphere and then just build up the top jaw and eye sockets and then hinge down the lower jaw. Of course, the dragons are going to be breathing fire, so that's going to be important for this. It's also important to note that this one here is a wyvern, so we have one wyvern in this build and one dragon. So that one that we just built has no front legs. This one, however, will, and this one is in a lot more of a dynamic position, so it's really important for this one to be interacting with that terrain. So I mark out its front legs onto the mountain as I want them, then mark out where its hips would be and back legs. Then I take this off of the terrain so that I can properly see it and work with it off to the side. Blocking it in much the same as before, wireframing out the thickness that I want. I think the main struggle with this was making it so that the dragons were not too thin. That is something that I always struggle a lot with organics. I always make them too thin and tend to ignore muscle a little bit too much. So it's a lot of personal improvement that I need to do here, but I think doing a little exercise like this is definitely helpful. Once I'm happy with my dragon shapes, I can then begin on the wings. The wings for the wyvern are very, very simple. I mean, it's literally basically like coloring in the shapes and then flipping that over to the other side. But for our actual dragon, it's a little bit more of a complicated wing shape, and I need to do some of the muscles on those wings. So Once it's all filled in, we can then move on to the coloring. I decided to go for a quartz and prismarine because this matches the colors of the dragons in the Dragon Isles build. They're just much bigger dragons, so perhaps they grew up. Then we draw in the fire, which I'm going with a gradient of white to red, and then of course add the fire to the tower that is burning. And then the build is complete. Thank you all so much for watching to the end of this video. I had so much fun creating this build. It was absolutely incredible, and I definitely learned a lot. Remember, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more content like this one. I would really appreciate you joining our lovely community. Special thanks to the amazing actors from my Discord server who volunteered their time to come in and be a part of Valor's story. I really appreciate you guys. It was so much fun. If you want to be a part of a story like this sometime in the future, definitely join my Discord server because that is where I do all of my announcements. Get in there if you aren't in there already. You're missing out. Anyways, thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!